Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and with this video I want to talk a little bit about Season 2 of Arrow, which I finally just got done watching in its entirety. It was a whirlwind season once again, and yeah, I had so much fun watching this. It basically only took me a couple of days to whip through all of these episodes. It was that damn good. And I've been told that by people on Facebook that you're going to love Season 2, and even getting into Season 3, which is currently airing as of the time of this recording, have yet to get into that at all. But people have said, it gets better and better and better every step of the way. And I have to agree with that. I mean, I had some comments from some people also saying that they kind of liked Season 1 better. But this was just awesome. I mean, the whole idea of, Oliver having run into Slade on this island and Slade, Deathstroke the Terminator, coming back for vengeance. That's the entirety of the arc of this season in a nutshell, although we don't see it coming for a few episodes in. But I love that the impetus at the start of this season is the aftermath of what happened at the tail end of the last season with Tommy's death, because he was such a close friend to Oliver all through life. The ups and downs of that sort of love triangle effect that was going on in Season 1 and everything, between he and Laurel and Tommy. I mean, seeing Tommy brought to an end, it changes Oliver's entire outlook by, the start of Season 2. Recreating this Arrow persona. I'm no longer going to take lives as essentially the vow he puts forth. And he stays true to that all through the season. I mean, it's only under the most extreme circumstances, and even then he tries to find a way around taking lives. It's really some of the surrounding characters around him that are still doing the life-taking and such like that. I mean, Roy gets, roid-raged out with that super serum Mirakuru, and wow, that was incredibly insane. But I really loved... There's this episode where he's suffering hallucinations. I mean, he sees Slade coming to attack him. He sees Shadow, who unfortunately bites the bullet very literally in this season. I was really kind of shocked that she was off that early on. But of course, that coincided with the reveal that Sarah Lance was still alive. She's the Black Canary, all this kind of stuff. Just amazing, amazing stuff in this season. But you had this hallucinating episode where, at one point, Oliver's down. He's down for the count. He's like down on himself. He's like, I failed. I'm not a hero. I can't do the right thing anymore. And he sees Tommy. And I love that, of course, they had the actor back, whose name escapes me off the top of my head, who played Tommy, to imbue in him a sense of empowerment with the words that he shared. Even though it is a hallucination, a product of Oliver's mind, it's what he needed to hear. And it was a real, tear-jerker moment for me, which I didn't expect. I didn't expect to actually be caught so much in that moment. Actually tears flowing from my eyes as Tommy sort of comes back from the dead, in a sense, to tell Oliver, you're my hero. You are a hero, and that kind of thing. And then, of course, talking about Shadow being killed on the island by Ivo. I was really surprised that this was a character, from DC Comics cropping up in the way that he did on the show. And his forcing, after some rigmarole that I won't get into, you have to watch the season if you want to check it out, and figure that all out for yourselves, what happens. But he basically gives Oliver an ultimatum. Because he's after this super serum Mirakuru and everything like that, there's this point where he just loses it. It's like he's completely insane, forcing Oliver to choose between, of course, Sarah and Shadow. Whose life does he want to protect most? And he was actually really shocked at that point that Sarah was even alive. It had been like, that whole first year, he didn't know that. He thought she was dead. Here she is alive and well, and I love how there's parallels between the flashbacks and the current unfolding story, because, of course, Papa Lance is going to find out Sarah is alive in this season. Laurel eventually does, basically hitting rock bottom, all these kinds of things. They're running alongside, parallel with the flashbacks to the island. Lian Yu, where, of course, Oliver, it was a shock to him to find out Sarah was alive, and much as it will be a shock, in the current sort of unfolding story, as I say, with Papa Lance and Laurel and everything, and even, Mama Lance, Alex Kingston's character. But the idea that Ivo would cross that line and just the psychosis, and that is also sort of layered together with, of course, Slade, who had been pretty much burned to almost the point of death. He was dying. They find that sub, and, you know, he gets injected with the Mirakuru himself, and boom, you know, he goes mad. I mean, that's what starts his whole seeking vengeance against Oliver, when basically Ivo pretty much telegraphed by Sarah this was what's probably going to happen. You know, if you don't off Ivo right off the bat, she told Oliver, Slade's going to know, you know, he's going to use that against Slade and against you, that whole thing about, oh, well, you decided to protect me and Shadow died at his hand, but it's really your fault. And just the layers, you know, it was that thick and that engaging to me, like, wow. You know, it's almost soap opera at the highest echelon level of just intriguing storytelling with these twists and turns. The idea, speaking of which, in the modern unfolding arc, we find out that Thea is actually the daughter of Malcolm Merlyn. And Merlyn, of course, I mean, you could pretty much peg that he wasn't dead and everything like that. Was a Lazarus pit involved? I don't know. That's my guess, because he seemed pretty damn dead to me. But, you know, that whole thing, it almost answers certain questions to the nature of her character, even though she was raised by Robert Queen and, you know, Moira Queen and everything. The ins and outs of that family arc and everything like that, the sort of dirty dealings that were going on, we find out that, you know, Robert Queen, he was an honorable guy in season 1 and everything. He was trying to undo all these things that he didn't even maybe fully understand that he was involved with Malcolm Merlyn, the undertaking, everything like that. But you had, you know, basically this revelation, this hardcore revelation, that makes so much sense with certain aspects of Thea's nature. She's very much trying to live up to the embodiment of what Robert Queen, you know, how he raised her, becoming a more honorable character. When we first are introduced to her, she's kind of doing drugs and really wild and everything like that. She gets in trouble. And then through meeting Roy, she starts to sort of own up to it, and she becomes a more mature character. And I just found it interesting that coinciding with that sort of dark side of her nature really comes to fruition under the, you know, reveal of the fact that her real true blood father is in fact Malcolm Merlyn by the end. She wants nothing to do with that revelation at all. And she wants nothing to do with her mother and Oliver, who she felt was lying to her all her life, knowing this stuff. Of course, this was information passed on to her by Slade as a means to break up the family unit of Oliver's and everything like that. But by the end, it's just amazing to me that she would come to that culmination where she's willing to leave Roy. She doesn't trust him. She doesn't trust Oliver. Of course, what happens to Mommy Dearest? I call her Mommy Dearest. Slade basically offs her. That was a really big-time shock to me, because just 2 episodes or whatever before that, I was really afraid they were going to kill off Laurel's father, you know, Detective Lance, or at least in this season, Officer Lance. He got demoted for working with the Arrow, and he even gets arrested at one point in this season. But I mean, out of the sort of supporting cast of this show, not counting Felicity, my favorite character in the supporting cast is actually Detective Lance. And I've been very afraid every step of the way. Every time he's getting, you know, manhandled by thugs, or there's an action sequence going on, you know, he's just told Laurel, hey, I love you, and, you know, be safe. Or he's seen Sarah and be safe, and I love you, and all this stuff. I'm like, they're going to off him. They're going to kill him any minute. It's going to happen. And then, of course, you get to the finale, and he basically doubles over, spilling out blood. He's got pain in his stomach. Something happened to him. I really hope they don't kill off Officer Lance, Detective Lance. Actually, he got the promotion back toward the end of the season. But he's a standout character to me. I love the actor. I love the character. And the interplay between he and his 2 daughters in this season. And so that was a surprise to me that finally they kind of owned up to it. But as I say, I kind of sort of felt that the Moira Queen thing, being killed, murdered by Slade, of course, might have been something that was coming. But it was still a bit of a shock when it finally did, when the leg finally dropped. Because, of course, Slade used the same sort of atmosphere and outlook that Oliver had been pitted against with Ivo, trying to make him decide between Thea and his mother, much in the same way as Ivo tried to make him decide between Shadow and Sarah. So, I mean, it was just really interesting. I love the fact that we had, of course, the revelation that Sarah was actually running from the League of Assassins. I had speculated in the Season 1 video I did, basically, you know, how Malcolm Merlyn's whole outlook on trying to take down, you know, the sort of ghetto segment, if you will, the Glades as it was called, excuse me, in, Starling City. It seemed very reminiscent to me of a League of Assassins Ra's al Ghul situation. And we hear both the pronunciations Ra's al Ghul and Ra's al Ghul. I kind of like that they've merged the two in this series instead of just picking one. That might, tick a lot of fanboys off and that kind of thing. But following on the coattails of Sarah's coming back to Starling as the Black Canary and, all that stuff, we basically find out that she's been followed. They're, hunting her, the League of Assassins, but not quite what we think, as far as why. Basically, she's hooked up with Nissa, a daughter of Ra's al Ghul, and I thought that was kind of cool. At the same time, just kind of like, wow. But I like how that forms a unity, a sort of unexpected unity toward the end of the season, where, you have Slade unleashing this entire army of these sort of, Deathstroke wannabes with their super serum, souped up powers and everything. Even the character played by Summer Glau, who was a pleasant surprise that she cropped up in the series, she gets injected with it, and I'm not entirely clear if she's supposed to actually be Slade's daughter. I know Slade in the comics has both a son and a daughter, or maybe two sons and a daughter. I'm not exactly clear on his history entirely. But seeing her suited up, I was like, oh yeah, okay, that's probably supposed to be his one kid. I don't know if that was actually clearly stated in season 2 of Arrow, but I liked that dynamic. I liked the aesthetic of, her suited up the way she was to match, and basically working in tandem on the business side of Oliver's whole, the Queen Industries or whatever it is, Queen Consolidated. Taking that down was just one step, one of the pegs along that whole course for Slade. And the sort of interesting idea that she actually got with Papa Queen, Robert Queen. But suffice to say, it was entirely badass that you basically have Nissa and the League siding up with, Sarah. Of course, she basically called them into action, and they're working right alongside Oliver, Diggle, Diggle's sort of ex, I guess you could say, but they kind of re-inflame things, and he's got a kid on the way now, bun in the oven as well. And, the idea of all of them, that shot where they're all in that tunnel going after these, Deathstroke wannabes, as I call them, it was just really awesome as they're, powering toward the camera, and you see them all in a line. Roy's got his mask that Oliver gave him. Oliver's all decked out with it, and, Canary's there, Nissa's there, the assassins are behind them. They're ready for a big-time beatdown, and I love that we got that full force toward the end of the season. These two forces coming together and butting heads, and effectively the good guys won. Of course, the misdirection that, was a part of this whole bringing Felicity back to, Queen Manor, if you will, which is basically devoid and emptied out at that point. But Oliver has caught on that Slade, put all these little eavesdropping cameras and devices all around the mansion. And he brings Felicity there and he says, he got the wrong woman, meaning Laurel. It's really you I love. When he said, I love you to Felicity, I almost lost my crap. It was like, what? I didn't understand that one bit. I was hoping that was kind of like a dream sequence, but I'm like, in the middle of an episode this hardcore, nah. And it turned out to be, a plan of action that Oliver had put together. So that moment was hella awkward, but at the same time the payoff was all there, because once you have that confrontation toward the end with Slade and of course Oliver, I love how they're interspersing it back with this whole interaction where you're seeing, this is the point where Oliver puts that arrow in Slade's eye. He was left for dead on this ship. Sarah seemingly had died at that point as well, very much akin to how his first memory of losing her was. She was kind of pulled off the ship into the water, and later he would find out, oh crap, she's actually really alive, again and again. Twice it would happen in his life. So I like the parallels, again, the parallels of depth in the story and the depictions of these characters. All throughout the season, you didn't only have Slade and Deathstroke, who, by the way, I gotta say, Manu Bennett really impressed me in this role that much more as he took that malevolent turn. Especially in that final episode, though, I'm like, this almost feels like Solid Snake fighting Big Boss, because he really had that Big Boss vibe with the eye patch and the souped up, Slade outfit and everything like that. But you have other villains like Count Vertigo coming back, the very creepy, I might add, Doll Maker, Clock King, which I don't know, I wasn't that impressed with that particular episode. I felt like you probably could have had more emphasis on him as the baddie instead of the cronies he had working for him and everything. But the idea that Brother Blood was an integral part of this whole second season, and the sort of shocking reveal that he's not doing this on his own. It's a mask to be worn. There can always be another Brother Blood. He's not, even though he was killed off by Slade, Slade basically turned on him toward the end of the season. It's still out there that there can be another Brother Blood in, the show, or as a villain in this cinematic or television DC Comics universe, if you will. But that whole idea of you're thinking Brother Blood is the villain of the season and then Slade is the one who's debuted later on. It's like, again, the twists and turns. One of the biggies, one of the things I really hoped for that I think I mentioned in my season 1 video was Barry Allen's showing up. And sure enough, he was in 2 episodes, I believe, in this season. And we're basically seeing the origins of the Flash in those 2 episodes. It did feel a little bit off-kilter toward the end where we're focused on him going back to Central City and he gets struck by the lightning. Because it was kind of like, I felt like it was kind of shoehorned in there, like they should have saved that maybe for the pilot. But just having his character very likably played by Grant Gustin, and it would make me want to see more of that character, so it worked in that regard. It was just really awesome, I thought. Touching back on the whole layers within the show of the character dynamics, I like how they hearken to other things. We have basically Detective Lance, or Officer Lance, as he is through the majority of the season, meeting the Arrow on rooftops a la, Commissioner Gordon and Batman. At some point, we find that, not only has Laurel stumbled onto the fact that Oliver is the Arrow. I mean, basically she was told, I think. I'm getting the lines mixed up of who was told and who found out and who, pieced it together. But not only is it Laurel, but also his mother, Moira, had figured out that he was the Arrow. And there's that big moment that coincides with this revelation that she figured out Oliver was the Arrow, that calls back to a sort of impromptu pregnancy that Ollie's worrying about. This is before he's ever lost on the island, everything like that. And it's basically not so much implied, but I mean, it's pretty overtly put out there that, Mommy Dearest paid this woman $2 million to leave, to just disappear off the face of the earth, carrying potentially, and I should say allegedly, Ollie's child. So the implication is left that if it was true that this chick was actually pregnant, Ollie's got a kid out there. And this is going to be a whole aspect of this character I'm not familiar with at all, because I'm very loosely familiar with, the Green Arrow character. I don't know if the comics have ever depicted him as having a kid, let alone seeing the rest of his family as we do in this series. So I feel like that's a potentially really unique aspect if he ever does figure it out. If they ever bring that back into play by some means, again, to use the term riveting, I was on the edge of my seat with a lot of this stuff. Toward the end, basically I'm just left absolutely excited to see where we go from here. As of the time of this recording, the news just broke recently that as Season 3 progresses live on TV, which I'm hoping to catch up with eventually, Season 4 has been approved. The Flash, the first season has been going well. It has been approved for a second season. And it's not hard to see why, watching the series, because I feel like the stories, the arcs are well plotted throughout the entire season. There are really legit twists and turns that just absolutely astound me as a viewer, not knowing exactly where they're going with it, only having vague familiarity with certain of these characters, so I'm not a raving, lunatic fanboy at every twist and turn where, oh, that character didn't live up to my expectations. Talk about awesomeness with the Suicide Squad showing up. I have only really just become familiar with the Suicide Squad in the New 52, the very first of the trade volumes of that. And it's got me really interested to read more. Of course, Harley Quinn is sort of the primary character in that framework, and I think Deadshot's in there too. It's been a while since I read it. But I love that you have these characters, basically Deadshot's in there, and you had, what was his name, Bronze Tiger, Michael Jai White, who I thought was pretty kick-ass in that role. And, that's the aesthetic we got going on here. I love that we got unique spins that still harken back, at least to my mind, the true-blooded nature of these characters. Enough of what we love about them, but also through the performances, through the actors that are, chosen for this particular show and casted in this show. Huntress came back again. It's like I was really excited for these things and the twists and turns in the story, and the allusions to the Birds of Prey, because of course Canary goes up against Huntress, really got me excited. This video has just been raving about all these different aspects of Season 2 of Arrow, and so I'll probably put the cap on it here and ask you to post in the comments below or as a video response what you thought of Arrow Season 2, what were standout moments to you, as I've described were some of mine in this particular video. And yeah, as you can see, I'm just bubbling. I can't wait to eventually get to Season 3 and such like that. This was just a blast. And yeah, I hope this video finds you well, and I'll catch you all later. Peace.